Greetings and thanks for tuning in today. I just come to you today because I want to know if you have been on the struggle bus. Is that you? Have you been on the struggle bus? Because I was on the struggle bus last week, especially on Saturday, and it hit me. My name is Dr. Jeanette DeWitt. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I love coaching, and I love sharing information with you. Today I'm going to be a little bit more real than I normally am because last week was tough. And sometimes that happens in life. Sometimes life doesn't go the way you plan it to go. Some weeks are harder than others. Some days are harder than others. But what do? Well, it all came to a head for me on Saturday. At the end of the week on Friday, I was flat out exhausted. I was physically tired because I started a new workout 3 weeks ago. So I was at the end of my second week of the new workout, and I'm lifting a lot heavier weight than I really ever have before, and that's intentional. I'm trying to get really strong so that I can do a rucking event in August of 5 to 8 miles. And rucking is just walking with a rucksack that's a little bit weighted. And on top of that, I've never done it before at that distance, and I've never done an event before, and I've never done that distance with my dog, and I want to do all of that, but I got to be strong. So physically I was tired. The other thing, I wasn't sleeping well last week. Sleep can be a struggle for me, but last week was off the charts, just terrible sleep. And so I was just physically exhausted, but I was also mentally and emotionally exhausted. A lot of things happened throughout the week that were a little bit frustrating, a little bit challenging. I really had to think through some things, plus some really good, positive opportunities were coming my way. And I came to the realization that I just can't do them all. So on Saturday when I woke up, I had like the worst migraine. I don't get migraines often, and when I do get them, I typically get them gone in about 30 minutes because that's one of the things that I'm really, really good. In fact, I'm one of 10 experts in the country on total motion release, which was founded by Tom DeLonzo Baker and has an over 20-year history of helping people get their symptoms down by 50% in 30 minutes. So I'm actually really good about getting my headaches and my migraines gone when they happen, but this wasn't happening that day. I was so tired and I was just physically exhausted. My forehead hurt. I felt like I had like all the symptoms across my face and into my teeth. It hurt to like even just bite down. And it was not comfortable. We were supposed to go to a party that night, and as the day was going on, I was just like, that ain't gonna happen. I don't want to be around loud noise. I don't want to be going out in the cold. I don't want to be around just staying out late. And so ultimately we ended up not going. But what I realized was this. I did these 4 tips, and it really helped me kind of get off the struggle bus. So if you are on the struggle bus, I know that was kind of a long intro, but I wanted to give you some context. Because a lot of times I come on and I'm super positive, and I'm just naturally a positive person. I always try and look at the bright side of things. On Saturday, that wasn't happening. I was irritable. I really wasn't kind to be around because, when you hurt and when you're tired, you're not always at your best. And admittedly, I was not at my best. But what I realized is these 4 tips. Number 1, I was tired. I hadn't slept well. So I had to intentionally make sure that Saturday night, I went to bed early. So if you are struggling, take a look at your own routine. What is your sleep hygiene? Are you deprived of sleep? Because if you are deprived of sleep, that can be worse cognitively, concentration-wise, than a drunk driver. And that's kind of where I was. Now, I don't drink. I've never drank, so I don't know what it's like to be drunk or even buzzed. But cognitively, things weren't like clicking on all cylinders for me. I was very slow. My reaction time was very slow. And so I knew I had to go to sleep. I had to get a good night's sleep in order to be prepared to get up to go to church and serve as a volunteer and be really a good person and a positive person and for other people. So that motivated me because I wanted to be at my best so that I would represent God and the church well the next day. Number two, I realized that I had a lot of really good opportunities coming my way in my business, and I was already in some really good opportunities too. But I can't do everything. I'm a solo practitioner. I'm a solopreneur. It's me, myself, and I in my business, and I love what I do. But I can't overextend myself. I've been there, I've done that. It put me into a health crisis in 2014 and 2015, and I don't want to go back there. And so I realized that I need to say no to some things. I need to stop overcommitting and stop overextending myself. The power of no is helpful and it's there for you. And so when you say no to some things, it means that you get to say yes to other things, even when you are presented with some really good options. And it's kind of like, oh, these are really good options. I don't want to say no to all of them. But if you don't say no to something, you won't be good at any of it, and you won't be good for people. And more importantly, and it's not a selfish thing, you're not going to be good for yourself. And when you're not good for yourself, you can't be good for other people. So step number one, or tip number one, was make sure you're getting enough sleep. Tip number two is say no. The power of no is a very, very good thing. It prevents you from overcommitting, it prevents you from overextending, and it prevents you from not doing anything well. Number three, write your own story. What I realized on Saturday as I was trying to get off the struggle bus is that I let other people write my story all week long. I was constantly reactive. So when somebody phoned me, when somebody emailed me, when somebody texted me, I stopped what I was doing and I replied to them. And normally I have really good boundaries. And I'm like, I block my time. So when I do, work on this project, I'm working on this project. When I'm with a client, I'm with that client 100% dedicated to them. No distractions. That was not happening this past week. I had more clients than I normally have, and I had less free time because of other appointments. I'm not complaining. It was just a reality because my business is growing, which is an awesome thing. I just wasn't managing and prioritizing my time well. So what I realized is I was reacting to all these messages instead of blocking my time. And when I did that, it overextended me. It put me into an emotional state of fire alarms going off everywhere. Instead of me taking control of my schedule, instead of me writing my story, I was letting other people dictate my time. And when you do that, you're going to feel like popcorn popping all over the place, or you're going to feel like you're responding to a ton of fire alarms, and it makes you anxious, makes you overwhelmed, it makes you anticipating for the next thing, and you never get a sense of quiet. You never get a sense of winding down, which is probably why I didn't sleep well this week. And then the fourth thing that I realized too is you got to have a coach. I have a coach. I'm in a coaching group. We meet every single week, and it's very, very helpful because I get to bounce ideas off of a coach and also the group of people in the coaching group. And it's a really, really positive experience because I realize that when I'm struggling with something, other people have lived that too. And so I really responded well on Saturday to remembering what other people in the group had said when they were on the struggle bus. And I remembered some of the tips and tools that they utilized and that I could apply to myself. And I will tell you that, yes, I am a coach. I help people get pain-free and I help them get fit. But there's more to that coaching. When I talk to people, I help people figure out their day too. A lot of times people who are struggling with pain, they don't move as well. And so things take longer. And so when we get their pain coming down, they start to realize that they have a little bit more time in their day. They can kind of structure their day better. We talk about meals. I don't do meal planning for people, but I give them suggestions. I'm not a registered dietitian, so I'm not really allowed to do that within my scope of practice. But I give people the basics and a framework that they can work in, and I give them a lot of suggestions. And that's what I really utilized on Saturday, is my experience of being in a coaching group and hearing what other people had to say, listening to the words of wisdom from the coach, going back, kind of listening to some replays as well, and some personal development podcasts. And that kind of flipped my script a little bit. And it allowed me to kind of recenter and refocus and start to kind of make some changes in my mindset, as well as preparing myself to go to sleep, preparing myself for Sunday the next day. So I tell you this because if you are on the struggle bus, you can get off the struggle bus. If you're on a hamster wheel, you can get off the hamster wheel, but you do have to step back and you have to reflect on what got you to where you are in this situation. Some of it may be really positive things. Let's be honest, some of it might just be awful stuff. You know, life can throw us curveballs and it can throw us some lemons, and we have to figure out a way sometimes to turn the lemons into lemonade. And that wasn't my week. I had a lot of positive things happening all through the week, but they were really coming at me too fast than I could process. So I hope these 4 tips help you. Go to sleep. If you're overwhelmed, if you're anxious, if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, everything's coming at me, maybe you need to step back and get some rest, which also means you're going to have to say no. And that's tip number 2. Make sure you say no. Make sure you're not overcommitting and overextending yourself, which brings me to tip number 3. You have to write your own story. You can't let other people dictate your story. You can't let other people dictate your time. You are in charge of your day. You are in charge of your schedule. You are in charge of your story. And when you start letting other people dictate that, you feel like you have a loss of control. And then you feel like you're everywhere, but really you're nowhere. So write your own story. What are your goals for that day? What are your goals for the week? What are your goals for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? And if it doesn't align, if a person who comes into your life does not align with those goals, I'm not saying be mean to them, but there are people who pop in and out of our world, and that's great. But they can also suck the time and the energy from us and then distract us from where we really want to be. So if you have tasks, if you have people who are taking energy away from you instead of contributing to your energy, and if they're not aligned with where you want to go, again, be kind, be nice, but set some boundaries and move forward in your story, in your lane. And that's really, really important. And then come to tip number 4, get a coach. If you are really on the struggle bus and you feel isolated, you feel like you're in a silo in a world by yourself, get a coach. That's what I do. I'm a health and wellness coach. I help people get rid of pain and get fit. And I help them along the way with other things, especially like the 4 walls of health, as I call it. Their physical health, which is nutrition, their exercise, and their sleep, their rest, rejuvenation. I help them with their emotional support, and maybe sometimes that's referring them to a counselor. Maybe your coach needs to be a counselor. That is fine. That is a really good positive, and it shows that you have strength to go ask for help from somebody who's more qualified than you, a friend, or even a health and wellness coach. So if you need that type of emotional or mental health counseling to kind of bring things together or deal with some of the things that have happened in your past or in your present, then seek out that person. The other wall of health is finances. Again, I'm not a financial consultant or anything like that. I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace. But if your finances are all over the place and you've got a lot of debt and you've got a lot of bills coming in, that's stressful. Let's take care of that issue too. And then your 4th wall of health is spiritual. What's your relationship with God? For me, my Lord and Savior is Jesus. I'm going to spend a lot of time with my daily devotional, getting my mindset right, making sure I'm aligned with God. If you are not a believer in that way, what is your belief system? Maybe dive into that. For me, I'm going to always encourage people to follow the path of Jesus and the Bible. It's the number one book every single year. They don't put it on the New York Times list anymore because it's just long-standing. The Bible's the number one bestseller. So, and it's the truth. So I like to go that route. But if you are not focused on your health IQ, what are your baseline? What's your knowledge of your health awareness? That's health IQ. If you don't have 4 strong pillars, 4 strong walls of health, physical, emotional or relational, financial and spiritual, if one of those walls is out of balance, guess what? The walls of your health house are going to crumble. And then your roof is health esteem, knowing where you are right now, being comfortable where you are right now, but also knowing you have another level you want to get to. So if those are out of balance, just like those 4 tips, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not saying no and you're overcommitting, if you are not writing your story and you're letting other people write your story, and if you are trying to do everything on your own without guidance from a coach, from a mental health counselor, from a pastor, that's going to be a problem, and that's going to add up over time. So I hope this has been valuable to you. I know a lot of people at this time, it's January, what is it, the 22nd? A lot of people set resolutions at the beginning of the year or at the end of December, and right about this time, those start to fall off and people start feeling bad about themselves and they start to get on the struggle bus. I don't think it was a coincidence that last week that hit me. So I want to just share with you those 4 tips. Because if that is you, you can get off the struggle bus. There are things today that I'm going to do a lot differently than I did last week because I took time over the weekend to reflect on what went wrong so I can get back on track. If you set resolutions, which I'm not a big fan of, I like goals because goals tend to be something that I can objectify and quantify, and I can actually attain. Resolutions tend to be very global, but there's not a step-by-step process to actually get there. If that's you, if you've set resolutions that are really, really big, first of all, dream big, because that's important. But it can also be overwhelming because you're like, well, how do I actually achieve that? Use these 4 tips to get back on track. Use these 4 tips to say, is this aligned with where I want to go to meet that big resolution or that goal? And if it's not, get rid of it or delegate it. Because some things, let's just face it, some things you can't get rid of. Everybody has to go to the grocery store or do Instacart or something like that. Everybody has to sleep at some point, make meals, make that convenient for yourself. Everybody has to do laundry or go buy clothes if you're not going to do laundry. So there are certain things that you can't get rid of, but you can delegate it or you can figure out how to put it in your day so that you're writing the story to get those things accomplished. I hope you find this valuable. I know this went a little bit longer than I usually go, but sometimes when you're on the struggle bus, you need a little bit more encouragement. And I hope I brought that to you today. If you like this, please share it out to people. There's a lot of people struggling out there right now. I know I'm not the other one. I see on Facebook, a lot of times we get the glamour stories. We get to see pictures of everything that's going great, and we don't get the real people. And I do that too. I'm intentional. Like, I'm not going to put all my dirty laundry out on social media. But this is real. People struggle. People have issues that they need to get resolved. And I hope these 4 tips help you. So just to recap, go to sleep. Get well rested. Say no. Don't overcommit and overextend yourself, even when the stuff is really good options. You can't do everything. You are one person. Number 3, write your own story. And number 4, get a coach if you need help. Thanks a lot. Have a blessed day.